In this video, we are going to talk about shape and form. Those are two terms that we use in drawing, and we're going to base our discussion in this video around the basics. We're just going to deal with some very basic things so we can understand what we're talking about before we apply it to the human figure. First, let's look at some shapes. And you can think of shape as two-dimensional information, so that's 2D. That's things like circle, square, triangle, rectangle. Those are some basic shapes. They're flat, they're two-dimensional. They're like the next step up from a line is a shape. It's an enclosed line that describes, in this case, some really fundamental shapes we're all familiar with. Form you can think of as three-dimensional information. So a circle, we don't call it a circle anymore. When it goes into 3 dimensions, we call that a sphere. It's essentially a circle that's become three-dimensional. A square, three-dimensional, becomes a cube. A triangle becomes a cone. And a rectangle becomes a cylinder. You can see these forms, they have more three-dimensional space than the shapes. If I were to maybe cross a line through this triangle, for instance, it would go flat like that. It's a flat shape. On the cone, it would do this. Cylinder, a flat line, curves like the cylinder does. So the thing to remember is that the forms are the things that take up three-dimensional space. The shapes are just the flat things. We'll be drawing both of those in this class, and it's an important part of figure drawing to learn to see the figure in terms of its shapes and to be able to switch gears and see it in terms of its forms as well. If you can switch gears and flip between both of those, it really helps you in your drawing, from what to do with the light source to proportions and sizes of things and so on. It just becomes very helpful. So for this week, we're going to be looking at form alone and learning how to draw these, roughly speaking. Okay, before we get to form, I just want to show the power of arranging shapes together in a group, because we're going to make use of this week as well. And I'm just going to do this with flat shapes now, but you can do it with forms as well. And it's arranging shapes along a line. So if we remember back to our gesture, there were 3 types of line that we were using. One of them was a straight line, one of them was a C curve, and one of them was an S curve. Those are the 3 lines that we're going to arrange some shapes along, and here's what we're going to arrange. We're going to arrange a circle, a rectangle, and a half circle. These are the shapes that we're going to arrange along these lines, and see what happens just because of the type of line you're using to map out where these shapes are going to be. So let's start with a straight line. Okay, so that's a straight line. And you can see this arrangement, this circle, rectangle, half circle, gives me kind of a little humanoid body core thing. It looks like the core of their body a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to do the other 2 and we'll just talk about the differences. Okay, so that's our 3 arrangements on some different lines. On the left here, we have these shapes organized along a straight line. Drawing along a straight line like this is going to introduce, and we talked about this in gesture a little bit, it's going to introduce some stiffness or tension. And if you want to know where awkwardness comes from, it comes from those 2 things. Stiff, tense, those are awkward terms. If you draw your figure with stiffness and tension in it, it will feel awkward. It won't feel fluid and graceful or moving or alive. Inanimate, dead things have stiffness as part of them. They don't move. Right? So beware of straight lines. Only use them when you really want to introduce that tension or stiffness. Even if you see a figure that appears to be standing up straight, are you sure they're not on some kind of gentle curve? Right, this figure is going to just feel more alive than this figure just because of the type of curve it's on. And then we have these 2 curves. You can see both of these have a nice sense of movement to them. This one's a little more maybe balanced. Things are kind of zigzagging. In the C curve figure, there's kind of a sense of motion, like a swoop, like this figure is moving that way almost. This is the basis of getting our figures to feel like they're in a good pose, like they're dynamic, is getting the arrangement of the core of the body sensible. And you can do that effectively by putting it on a curve. You look at the figure that you're about to draw and you ask yourself, if I had head, chest, hips, what kind of curve would that figure be on? And that can help us introduce more life into our poses.